Have you ever realized you're being followed, but every time you turn around, there's no one there? That's exactly what happened to me, and it turned a normal hiking trip into the scariest night of my life. My hiking trip turned into the scariest night of my life, and even now, I still think about it whenever someone mentions hiking alone. This happened about 3 years ago when I decided to go hiking in a forest trail a few hours away from my city. I've always enjoyed hiking, especially quiet trails where there aren't many people around. That day, the weather was perfect and the trail looked easy enough for a solo trip. I started hiking around the afternoon, planning to reach a small viewpoint before sunset and then head back. For the first couple of hours, everything felt normal. The forest was quiet except for birds and the sound of wind moving through the trees. I passed a few hikers earlier on the trail, but after a while I realized I hadn't seen anyone for a long time. I didn't think much of it at the time because the trail wasn't very popular. Around sunset, I reached the viewpoint. I stayed there for a while, taking pictures and enjoying the view. But by the time I started heading back down the trail, it was already getting darker than I expected. The trees blocked most of the remaining sunlight, and the path quickly became difficult to see. That's when I heard the first strange sound. It was the sound of footsteps somewhere behind me. At first, I assumed it was another hiker coming down the trail, so I stepped slightly to the side to let them pass. But the footsteps suddenly stopped. When I turned around, the trail behind me was completely empty. I stood there for a moment, listening carefully. The forest had gone unusually quiet. Thinking I was just being paranoid, I continued walking. After a few minutes, the footsteps started again. Slow, careful, following the same pace as mine. This time I turned around quickly, shining my phone's flashlight down the trail. Again, there was no one there, just trees and darkness. At this point, I started feeling uneasy. I began walking faster, trying to reach the parking area before it got completely dark. A few minutes later, I noticed something ahead on the side of the trail. It was a backpack lying on the ground near the trees. I stopped and looked around. There was no one nearby. The bag looked old and dirty, like it had been sitting there for a while. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. I stepped closer and nudged it with my foot. That's when I heard a branch snap somewhere behind me. I turned around immediately and pointed my flashlight toward the trees. For a split second, I saw someone standing between the trees about 20 or 30 feet away. They weren't moving. I couldn't see their face clearly, but I could tell they were watching me. My heart started racing. I called out, asking if they needed help, but they didn't respond. They just stood there, completely still. Then they slowly stepped back into the darkness. At that moment, I didn't care about the backpack anymore. I just started walking quickly down the trail. After a few seconds, I heard the footsteps again, but this time they were faster. I started running. The trail felt endless in the dark. Branches scratched against my arms as I moved, and my phone light barely showed the path ahead. Behind me, I could still hear something moving through the leaves. Finally, after what felt like forever, I saw the faint lights of the parking lot through the trees. I ran the rest of the way and jumped into my car, locking the doors immediately. When I looked back toward the trail entrance, the forest was completely dark and silent. No one came out. I drove away as fast as I could. The next day, I tried to convince myself that maybe it was just another hiker who didn't want to be seen. But something about the way that person stood there, silently watching me from the trees, still doesn't sit right with me. And the strangest part is that later I checked the park website. That trail had officially closed 2 hours before I even started my hike.